The air in the hotel room was thick with the remnants of laughter and the faint scent of alcohol lingering on our breaths. The night had started innocently enough: drinks at the pub, shared stories, and that unexpected joint passed between us like a secret promise. It is the kind of night that blurs lines and softens boundaries. Too much? I wondered briefly, but the thought dissolved as quickly as it came, replaced by the warmth of his hand brushing against mine as we stumbled back to the room. "You're tipsy," he teased, his voice low and teasing, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. His eyes gleamed under the dim light of the hallway, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if it was the alcohol or something else making my pulse quicken. "Says you," I shot back, though my words felt clumsy and heavy on my tongue. He laughed, a sound so familiar yet suddenly charged with something new, something electric. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing us into the quiet intimacy of the room. The lamp on the bedside table cast a golden glow, softening the edges of everything: our movements, our voices, even the tension that had been building all night. I leaned against the wall, watching him kick off his shoes and run a hand through his hair. His shirt clung to his frame, hinting at the muscles beneath, and I caught myself staring, my throat dry. "What?" he asked, catching my gaze. There was a playfulness there, but also something deeper, darker. A flicker of curiosity, maybe even desire. I shrugged, trying to play it cool, but my heart was pounding so loudly I worried he might hear it. "Nothing. Just didn't expect tonight to go like this." He stepped closer, his presence filling the space between us. "Like what?" His voice was softer now, almost tender, and it sent shivers down my spine. I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the truth was too tangled, too raw. Instead, I let my breath hitch as his fingers brushed against my arm, tracing a line from my elbow to my wrist. The touch was light and tentative, but it set my skin on fire. My mind raced, torn between pulling away and leaning into him. But when his eyes met mine, searching, asking for permission without words, something inside me gave way. I nodded, just barely, and that was all it took. His lips found mine in a kiss that started slow, almost cautious, as though testing the waters. But then his hands slid around my waist, anchoring me to him, and the kiss deepened and grew hungrier. The taste of him, whiskey and smoke and something uniquely his, flooded my senses, leaving me dizzy and desperate for more. My fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt, clutching him closer as our bodies pressed together, heat radiating between us. When he pulled back, his breath ragged, his forehead resting against mine, I could see the same conflict mirrored in his eyes. "Is this okay?" he whispered, his voice rough with need. I nodded again, unable to trust my voice. Because it wasn't just okay, it was consuming, intoxicating, and terrifyingly perfect. Without another word, he kissed me again, this time with a hunger that left no room for doubt. His hands roamed over my body, each touch igniting a new spark of desire, and I melted into him, surrendering to the pull of something I hadn't known I needed until now. Our clothes fell away piece by piece, discarded in a haphazard trail toward the bed. The cool sheets contrasted sharply with the heat of his skin as he hovered above me, his breath warm against my neck. "You're beautiful," he murmured, his lips grazing my collarbone, sending a jolt of pleasure through me. I arched into him, craving more, and he obliged, his mouth trailing lower, leaving a path of fire in its wake. Every touch, every kiss, felt like a revelation, like uncovering a part of myself I hadn't known existed. When his lips finally closed around me, I gasped, my hands tangling in his hair as waves of sensation crashed over me. It was too much, and not enough all at once, the ache building inside me until I thought I might shatter. And when I returned the favor, tasting him with the same fervor, the urgency only grew. The world outside ceased to exist, leaving only the two of us, lost in each other, chasing something neither of us could name but both desperately wanted. His breath hitched as I took him deeper, his grip tightening on my shoulders. "Hell," he groaned, and the sound sent a thrill through me. I reveled in the power of knowing I could unravel him, just as he had done to me. Our rhythm became frantic and desperate as we pushed each other closer and closer to the edge. But as I felt his control slipping, his hips bucking involuntarily, I paused, meeting his gaze. "Not yet," I whispered, my voice trembling with need. He swallowed hard, nodding, and we shifted, our bodies fitting together seamlessly as we continued to explore, devour, and lose ourselves in each other. The room was filled with the sounds of our breathing, our murmurs, and the soft rustle of sheets as we moved together. Time seemed to stretch and bend, every second stretching into eternity as we chased our release. And when it finally came, crashing over us like a tidal wave, it was overwhelming, all-consuming, and utterly unforgettable. We collapsed into each other, spent and breathless, the weight of what we'd just done settling over us. There were no words, none that could capture the depth of what had just happened. Instead, I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and hoped he could feel the unspoken gratitude in my touch. For now, the silence was enough. The rest could wait. The silence between us was thick, charged with an energy that neither of us could ignore. His chest rose and fell beneath my head, his heartbeat steady but quick, betraying the calm he tried to project. My fingers traced idle patterns across his skin, the warmth of him seeping into me as I lay there, tangled in the sheets and in him. It wasn't just the alcohol or the lingering haze from earlier, this was something else, something deeper, hungrier. Something neither of us had expected. I shifted slightly, lifting my head to meet his gaze. His eyes were dark, intense, and they held mine like a challenge. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice low, almost rough. The way it vibrated through me made my stomach tighten. I hesitated, my fingertips stilling against his chest. "I'm thinking, this doesn't feel wrong," I admitted quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyes flickered, and for a moment, I thought he might pull away, might retreat into the safety of denial. But instead, his hand slid up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing along my lower lip. "It doesn't," he agreed, his voice barely above a whisper. "But maybe, we should make sure." The air between us crackled, and I felt my breath catch as his words sank in. He didn't wait for me to respond, his lips crashing into mine with a hunger that sent a jolt straight through me. This kiss was different, deeper, more desperate, as if he was trying to prove something to himself, to me. His hands moved with purpose now, one tangling in my hair while the other slipped down to grip my hip, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I moaned into his mouth, my own hands roaming over his body, tracing the lines of muscle I had only glimpsed earlier. His skin was warm, alive beneath my touch, and I couldn't get enough of it. When he broke the kiss, his lips trailed down my neck, nipping and sucking at the sensitive skin there, leaving marks that I knew would linger long after tonight. My head tilted back, giving him better access, and I bit my lip to stifle the sounds threatening to escape. His hands moved lower, exploring, teasing, as if he was rediscovering every inch of me. When his fingers brushed against the apex of my thighs, I gasped, my hips arching instinctively toward him. "Tell me what you want," he murmured against my ear, his breath hot and sending shivers down my spine. "You," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Just you." He didn't need to tell twice. In one swift motion, he flipped me onto my back, pinning me beneath him. His eyes burned into mine, and for a moment, I felt small, vulnerable, completely at his mercy. But then he smiled, slow and dangerous, and any fear I might have felt evaporated, replaced by a thrill of anticipation. "Good," he said, leaning down to capture my lips again. "Because I'm not done with you yet." His hands moved with purpose, pushing the sheets aside and leaving me exposed to the cool air of the room. Goosebumps prickled across my skin, but the heat radiating from him kept me warm. He kissed his way down my body, pausing to tease and torment me until his lips finally found their target. The first swipe of his tongue drew a sharp gasp from me, my hands flying to tangle in his hair. He groaned softly, the vibration sending another shockwave through me, and I arched off the bed, my breath coming in ragged pants. He was relentless, his mouth working me with a skill that left me trembling, my legs shaking on either side of his shoulders. Just when I thought I couldn't take any more, when I was teetering on the edge, he pulled back, looking up at me with dark, hooded eyes. "Your turn," he said, his voice rougher than before. I protested weakly as he moved up my body, but the sight of him above me, his chest heaving, his expression hungry, silenced me. He settled between my legs, his weight pressing me into the mattress, and guided himself to where I needed him most. The first thrust was slow and deliberate, and I cried out, my nails digging into his back. He hissed at the sensation, his hips jerking forward, burying himself deeper inside me. "Hell," he breathed, dropping his forehead to mine as he began to move, setting a rhythm that had me clutching at him, desperate for more. His pace was punishing, each drive of his hips sending sparks shooting through me. I wrapped my legs around his waist, urging him on, and he responded with a growl, his hands gripping my hips hard enough to leave bruises. The room was filled with the sound of our breathing, our gasps, the slick slide of skin against skin. Every nerve in my body was alight, every touch, every movement amplified until I thought I might combust from the sheer intensity of it. He leaned down, capturing my lips in a messy, desperate kiss, swallowing my moans as I came apart beneath him. For a moment, everything went white, my body tightening around him as wave after wave of pleasure crashed over me. He followed soon after, his rhythm faltering as he spilled himself deep inside me with a low, guttural groan. We collapsed together, both of us struggling to catch our breath. His arms wrapped around me, holding me close as we floated back to earth. Neither of us spoke, the silence saying more than words ever could. But as I lay there, listening to his heart gradually slow, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that there was still so much more we hadn't explored, so many boundaries we hadn't pushed. And when his hand began to wander, trailing lazily down my side, I knew he felt it too.